Высшие должностные лица ведущих стран НАТО
Top officials in leading NATO countries have allowed themselves to make aggressive comments about our country.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting way to phrase that. Have allowed themselves, like, oh God. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna allow myself to say these bad things about Russia and Vladimir Putin. I'm gonna allow myself. Oh, I shouldn't.
Therefore, I hereby order the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff to place the Russian Army Deterrence Force on combat alert.
Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his country's deterrence forces, which includes nuclear arms, to be placed on high alert, as we learned that Ukrainian and Russian delegations will meet for talks as soon as today. Here with me now to talk about all of this is the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg.
Today, I asked the 27 leaders of Europe whether Ukraine will be in NATO. I asked directly. Everyone is afraid, does not answer. And we are not afraid. We are not afraid of anything.
Ukraine applied for NATO membership back in 2008. It was never approved. So did NATO fail Ukraine?
This war is President Putin's responsibility. He is fully responsible for the war, for the attack on Ukraine. What NATO allies do is that we provide support to Ukraine, and we are stepping up as a result of the invasion. We tried to find a political solution. We warned against this for many months, and now we are both increasing support to Ukraine, but also increasing the protection and defense for all NATO allies.
No question that this is on Vladimir Putin. But if Ukraine were allowed into NATO, one of two things would have happened. Either if this attack happened, all of NATO would have responded under Article 5, or Ukraine being part of NATO would have been a deterrent to Russia, and Vladimir Putin would not have invaded in the first place. So the question stands, based on what President Zelensky said, should they have been allowed into NATO?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you, I don't know much about this. I'm a very uninformed person. I don't understand. But I will say, my current wife is Ukrainian, and so I do speak with her, and I do pick up some things. But that sounds to me like a provocation. You don't provoke a nutcase. Vladimir Putin is obviously a nutcase, and so you do what you can to tiptoe around him. So I think that they were trying to do the best they could to provide support to Ukraine while not provoking Vladimir Putin. Obviously, it didn't matter because he was going to go in anyway. He had his heart's intent on going in anyway. And would he have gone in? If Ukraine was a part of NATO, he may have. Now he's threatening, a nuclear attack. He's saying he's being threatened. So the guy is obviously, lost it. He's not acting rationally. He has blood on his hands, lots and lots of Ukrainian and now Russian blood on his hands. And let's hear what the gentleman from NATO has to say.
We have supported their efforts to move towards NATO membership to help them modernize their defense and security institutions, to meet the NATO standards, to fight corruption. But at the end of the day, we need consensus, 30 allies to agree. That's the way we make decisions in NATO. And our message to Russia is that it is for Ukraine to decide whether they aspire for membership, and it's for 30 allies to assess when and if Ukraine meets those standards. As long as Ukraine is not a member, they will remain a very highly valued and close partner, and a partner that we will continue to support. So regardless of what you may think about NATO membership, there is no excuse whatsoever for Russia to invade a peaceful, democratic country as Ukraine.
Right. Well, on that note, for the first time in history, you are activating NATO's response force and deploying additional military forces to its eastern flank near this region. Do these moves indicate that you think that Russia poses a real and potentially imminent threat to NATO members?
We don't see an imminent threat, but we see a much more aggressive Russia, Russia which is contesting core values for our security, willing to use force against Ukraine, but also threatening NATO allies. And that's exactly why we, over the last years, since actually 2014, have increased our presence, and over the last months have stepped up further with thousands of more troops and also deploying.
So the reality of it is this: you have to think to yourself, okay, we do this, NATO does this, the United States does this, whomever. Then what's the reaction going to be? What's the reaction going to be by Vladimir Putin? Somebody that is obviously not in his right mind. So you have to gauge that. And the problem is, what makes it extra complicated is nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going on inside his head and how he's going to respond. So, you know, she was just, you could tell her attitude, the way the question was, she was forming the question, is it, you let them down. See, he wouldn't have done this if they were part of NATO, because we would have intimidated them. Very, very hawkish. The American mainstream media, very hawkish. They think that we can just intimidate everybody, and, you know, yeah, very uninformed, just like myself.